Right, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, or whatever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. There's a huge amount for the exposure of the show, and while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And if you've already done that for us, you're an absolute legend to us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson, and with me in the flesh for the first time in a very, very long time, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going okay, Mark. Yeah, the way that you pronounce flesh in that way makes me feel like some sort of Bloodborne boss. Like a big fleshy beast that's turned up in your room.
You're a big fleshy beast, Lewis.
No, it's good to be here. I came round specifically to watch Gamescom Opening Night live, which we've been doing. We'll come on to talk about all our thoughts on that show in just a few minutes, but yeah, good to be here as ever. It's been a long time certainly since we've done it in your space, because we did do a couple in mine when
that is true. That is true indeed.
Back on the mega desk.
back on mega desk. Although my mega desk isn't feeling very mega right now with 2 of us huddled over it, I have to say. Yeah, but we were doing a live reaction video, which you can see over on our YouTube channel. We don't use our YouTube channel very much at all, Lewis, do we? But I think that we're going to try and do more of it. Something that I believe I said last year at Gamescom, but here we are. But Lewis, what have you been playing this week?
This week, Mark, I've made a start at long last on Nier Automata.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Oh, God, finally. Jesus Christ.
It's been a long time coming. I mean, I know I was kind of supposed to play this a bit earlier, but Elden Ring destroyed everything.
I'll give you a buy on it for Elden Ring. We're cool.
I feel like Elden Ring has killed my whole year of gaming, but that's one we can say for near the end of the year. I've only played the first few hours. I'm not that far in, and actually, I don't think I've done anything yet that I haven't previously done, because I did play the first few hours of Nier Automata with you years ago.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not even sure if that was your first playthrough or if you'd kind of done that bit or not. So I've not really encountered anything that I haven't done before, but at the same time, I'm actually properly paying attention to it this time, which, like, obviously I wasn't before because I wasn't properly playing it.
Yeah, I think that we just jumped into it, if I remember correctly, just so I could show you the combat.
I think a bit of that, and so I had played for anyone that's played it, it kind of has a really bombastic, actually, opening level, essentially. I mean, it's
wild,
slightly tutorial, but I mean, it goes through so much gameplay wise and perspective wise. It changes quite dramatically throughout that whole section and ends in this really gargantuan boss fight, which is loads of fun. So yeah, I'm not too much further ahead than that. I'm kind of out exploring the destroyed city place, getting to grips with the kind of core mechanics. Like, so far, I'm finding the combat to be fine. I'm sure it's going to get a lot better, but at the moment I feel like I'm just holding R1 and bashing square whenever I'm near something and kind of closing the distance to enemies feels a little bit strange. I suspect I've got a lot of hang-ups from things like Elden Ring, that I'm expecting movement and stuff in a certain way that's not quite there. But story-wise, like, again, nothing much has happened yet, but the character, as in the mood and the atmosphere of the game and sort of all of that stuff, I'm already quite intrigued by. Like, there's been moments where I've gone like, oh, that feels like a little kind of nod to Metal Gear.
Oh man, I'm so glad that you've said that. I'm so glad that you've said that, because if you weren't at least intrigued by that, I'd be like, God, this could be a slot for you.
Yeah. It feels, it's got a style to it already.
It really does.
Within a few hours that I'm kind of... Yeah, I'm interested to see where all that goes. I'm sure the gameplay stuff, the kind of early kinks that I'm feeling with it, will kind of work themselves out. I'm not very concerned about that. So, and it does feel a wee bit like faster than I was expecting it to be.
Sure.
Not just in terms of like movement and combat, but in terms of like, I already feel like I'm making progress, even though I'm only a couple of hours in. Like, I've already spoken to like the resistance leaders, and I'm out in the desert now, and it's kind of like, all right, okay, I'm kind of going here and there, and I'm not... Again, this might be an Elden Ring problem. I don't feel like I'm stuck in one place for a long time. You know what I mean? So that's
God,
good.
You have so many Elden Ring hang-ups.
But yeah, that's what I've been playing. What about you this week?
Well, Lewis, I finished Triangle Strategy.
Nice.
Which feels like a game, similarly to Octopath Traveler, actually. It feels like a game of unrealised potential, is what I would say. for a game that was probably a 30-hour plus playthrough, the actual physical gameplay in that was staggeringly small.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much story, there was so much exposition, there was so much like forced exploration, which also culminates in story elements and them just giving you more and more and more information. And I like what they're doing with their story. I like that it's complex. I like that there's a huge cast of characters. I like that it can deviate in a lot of different directions, although you are still sort of spiraling towards one big choice at the end, basically, that has sort of 3 possible outcomes, and then there is a golden path I found out as well, which is like the true ending. But am I going to play the game again to get that? The combat in and of itself, like the actual battles that you get into, like I find quite fun. They're quite strategic. You can't fuck up, particularly as the game goes on. Like you have to be on it. But I don't know, I just feel as though the balance was way off, and I sort of felt that way with Octopath as well. And I think that both of these games have fantastic ideas in them and could be like genuinely fantastic games, like a sort of modern day Final Fantasy in terms of like Octopath Traveler, or like a kind of modern day Final Fantasy Tactics in terms of in terms of triangle strategy. Like I think that those games legitimately have that potential, but it's just not there with either of them, which is a wee bit disappointing. Nonetheless, I am glad that I played both. I don't regret playing either. But yeah, I just feel as though the games could be more than they were.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you definitely, from what you were saying the other week when you were kind of midway through Triangle Strategy, I was really hoping that it was going to, be overstuffed with story kind of at the beginning and middle, and it would become much more gameplay led. It doesn't seem like it has been.
Super didn't, no.
And I guess to me, I'm reassured because like I had thought before about checking out Triangle Strategy, but it was definitely the gameplay I was going there for, not the story, and so I just don't think I should go anywhere.
Do not play
near
it then.
Yeah.
If that is the case for anyone listening to this, to be honest with you, it's interesting because I don't regret playing either of those games, and actually I quite enjoyed playing large swathes of both of them. I would struggle to recommend anyone play either of them though.
Oh wow.
They're just such a huge time sink.
Sure,
they really are.
I think even like Octopath Traveler, a lot of people like that type of game and will gladly sit through hours and hours and hours of that type of thing. Maybe Triangle Strategy less so. Just
I would say so actually, because at least Octopath was like there was a lot of gameplay.
Yeah.
Like you were in battles a lot. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think for a lot of people that feels fine and normal. But when it's just lots and lots of exposition and story dumps, and either delivering it with literal cutscenes or in text format by being forced to like explore and talk to a bunch of different characters, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Oh well, you got through it. Never mind.
I did. And speaking of a lot less, we have a lot to get through on our Gamescom special here. So I think it is time for the news. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm using physical notes again, as we do with all these things. So if you hear any rustling of paper, it's me doing that and turning the pages. But Mr. Geoff Keighley started off the show with Everywhere, which is a game by Leslie Benzies, who's one of the original creators of GTA, we think. Anyway, he was definitely a big player at Rockstar. But the game he's making here seems to be metaverse adjacent, I will say, Liz. It's coming in 2023. The scope of this game seems to be absolutely massive. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely massive. New team, new studio, been in development for a long time. It was not very clear from this trailer at all remotely what this game is going to be.
Agreed.
Because it's kind of ticking along for a bit and you think maybe it's going to be one type of thing, and then it showed some cars, some sort of...
Yeah, it looked like a sort of very modern, like sci-fi setting, then immediately cut to like a sort of canyon with like sort of modern day looking dune buggies driving across it. So I'm not sure how time works in this game, where it's set. I have no idea what's going on.
It did, it seemed to shift about in sort of location and feel quite a lot. And then they came out on stage and they spoke quite a lot about, I guess, giving the players all the tools and all you can do whatever you want. You can basically live in this game.
You can create content in our game, and it was all like, you're saying all the bad words, all the bad words, red flags everywhere.
They never specifically said any of the trigger words around the metaverse or Web 3.0 or any of that sort of stuff, but yeah, there was a lot there that made you go, what is this? And like it's very hard to judge it even just as a game, like forgetting any of that stuff. You can't look at that trailer and be like, oh yeah, it's this type of game and it looks like it will be decent in these ways and not so good in these other ways. A lot of Scottish people involved in the project.
There was a lot of Scottish people involved. Leslie Benzies himself is a Scottish man.
If you happen to be a listener and you're on that team, please tell us a little bit more about the game.
Yeah, because we've watched that trailer twice now and we are none the wiser. After that, Lewis, was Dune Awakening, which is an open world MMO. No date on this, but I thought the CG trailer looked incredibly impressive graphics wise.
Yeah, it definitely did. A really nice little CG trailer. I think this is interesting. I noticed the URL for the game, I think, was like Dune Games, and that is now the second Dune game that we've got since the new movie came out, and obviously that's going to be a big franchise, so I think we're going to get a lot more of these games set in the Dune universe, which I think is well suited to gaming.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems as deep as the Star Wars universe, but is perhaps less well explored. So, yeah,
and
definitely a lot of potential
more, like,
there.
adult themes there as well, which is quite interesting. So,
Sure, definitely. Yeah. After that list, arguably one of the surprises of the show.
Definitely.
PlayStation have announced the DualSense Edge, which looks very cool, but it's basically PlayStation's response to the Xbox Elite controller. You could switch out the joysticks and all that. You could change the settings on your triggers and whatever. It seemed to have back paddles as well, I think. Yeah, I think that this is a long time coming for PlayStation. Xbox have had an equivalent high-end controller for a long time now, and PlayStation have never really had a response to this. So it was cool to see. Like, I thought it looked pretty cool. It looked like a big chunky boy.
Just big chunky DualSense. Yeah, these controllers, they don't speak to me massively because I've never really grasped what the use case is. Now, I totally get there's a lot of people out there who are playing games competitively and are playing like twitchy shooters and all that kind of thing, where actually having the perfect setup for you is very important. For like 99% of games I play, that none of this stuff would really matter.
Sure,
so.
I think for you specifically, Lewis, this is a fucking waste of money. Like,
Totally.
You definitely shouldn't get it. However, I think for a lot of people, including me, because I'm probably going to buy one, like I can feel it in my bones, Lewis, I would probably make use of this in some cases, I think, because I do occasionally make use of the back paddles on the Xbox controller, the Xbox Elite controller. And apart from anything else, like, that controller just is a nice controller on the hand. It's just a nice, weighty, good controller. If PlayStation could do something similar, I would do that. Do you know what I mean?
The DualSense is already nice in the hand.
The DualSense is a great controller.
I mean, I would
really
be curious as well to see if they can get the haptic feedback quite the same in a controller that has got modular parts, because you would have to build feedback into each component, I would have thought, right? Like, how are you going to get feedback through the sticks if you can take them
Interesting.
out?
Well, I don't know. Do you get feedback through the sticks? I thought you only got them on the triggers.
No.
And I don't think the triggers are replaceable.
You get resistance in the triggers, but, just the rumble across the whole pad.
The rumble's in the physical pad, though. It's not specifically in the...
Well, maybe not then, but I was looking at that as they were within the trailer for it, the advert for it, I suppose. They were kind of removing all these bits and then putting them back in, and I was looking at it going, how is that going to work if it already has this other functionality, which the Xbox controllers have never really had to bother with, right? So
yeah. No, it'll be interesting. I mean, I very much assume that they can make it work.
That they would be trying to.
Yeah, exactly. Or else it would feel like a bit of a downgrade potentially to some people, but I think that will be an expensive controller when it comes out, Liz. After that was a Callisto Protocol trailer. Again, this coming on December the 2nd. They are marketing this very hard right now. We got to see some more gameplay. Lewis, it continues to look fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
It does, yeah. Another good little look at it. We got to see some more kind of stealth action, some pretty violent stealth kills. The introduction of what Glenn Schofield was referring to as something new about tentacles coming out of these kind of alien zombies. I think essentially what was being driven at was that if you don't shoot these kind of tentacly parts quickly, effectively they might heal.
Yeah, they'll buff up in some capacity.
In some way.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It was sort of presented as if that was a radical new idea, and even as we were watching it and we both sort of said, games like Resident Evil have already done that. Then what we saw looked exactly like those things where, I remember in the old Resi games, you'd shoot someone's head off and then some tentacles would burst out of the top.
Yeah, I think specifically 4 done that a lot.
In particular, yeah. And then the kind of ones after that did a fair bit of that. So other than that, we got to see some sliding about and a big bit of water.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't really know what to make of that. I mean, it looked cool, but it was just, I don't know why they were showing us that for so long as well. Like, it was a big chunk of the trailer.
Yeah, I get the sense that they just wanted to get across there is that this has some more like sort of action adventure set pieces, as well as just being like an out and out stealth horror game, which is kind of nice to know, but it didn't feel like the sales point that he made it out to be.
It didn't. Look, bottom line, this game still looks fantastic.
Looks
I'm not necessarily sure this trailer was the highlight of the game, let's be honest, or showing off the highlights of the game. But it still looks fantastic. I'm still very, very keen to play it, and that is coming out on December the 2nd. After that, Lewis, was Lords of the Fallen. We got a cool looking CGI trailer of this. Like, me and you were watching this and we didn't know what this game was at all. Thought it looked pretty good. Don't really know much about the series, but looked good enough to me. After that was Moving Out 2, which is coming out in 2023. Moving Out being along the sort of lines of Overcooked and From Team 17 as well. Looked like pretty good fun. It looked like sort of that mad, chaotic fun that a lot of those games sort of are.
Fun, essentially.
Exactly. It looked cool. It looked like a good time if you were having a party, you know what I mean? After that, though, was Hogwarts Legacy. We got to see a sort of CG trailer as well as some gameplay as well. I have to say, I think that this trailer was the least good of the trailers that they've had. I thought it looked less good in this trailer than it had in previous ones. It's coming on February the 10th, 2023. Now, ultimately, I think this game's going to probably sell very, very well. As long as this isn't a complete swing and a miss. Do you know what I mean? I think that the game will do pretty well, and I do still think that the game probably looks better in its gameplay than it has any right to.
Certainly, yeah, I would basically agree with your analysis there, actually, that this certainly was not as impressive as the trailer we got a few months back, where we particularly were kind of like, oh yeah, this does look better than we were expecting it to.
Basically, I think the bar was very low.
The bar had,
and it has cleared that bar.
The bar had started very low. The last trailer we saw looked better than this one. I guess they were giving us a wee bit of the kind of story and context there, because what we'd seen before was more just like, look at Hogwarts and its surroundings and how they're sort of alive in a way that you might not have expected. So this, I mean, I'm not excited about it. We both commented actually on the fact that they're using this new tagline. I think it is new. I've never noticed it before.
I've never noticed it before.
Live the Unwritten, which feels yet again like a please don't hold J.K. Rowling against us game developers.
Yeah, it does feel like an intentional distancing from J.K. Rowling and all her fucking nonsense. Yeah. After that was new Tales from the Borderlands, Lewis. This was actually leaked in advance, but it's coming out on October the 21st, which is not far away at all. I don't know if this trailer was maybe trying to suggest that it was a bit more involved than the original Telltale games were. It seemed as though, or it felt as though it was a lot more actiony than those games, and I don't know if it might be more along the lines of Life is Strange, a sort of more actiony Life is Strange, and that you get to move around the world as opposed to just answer questions and cues along whatever path you're choosing. I thought it looked alright. It looked very much like Borderlands. I think Borderlands games always look cool. They always have a style about it. Whether or not you like the writing and the jokes is a very different thing. Lewis, I know you have very strong opinions on that. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I did think this looked okay. I like that some of the original Telltale devs who worked on the first game, which was really well liked.
Definitely. I mean, it was one of their better games, I think, yeah.
Well liked by fans, I think, of both Telltale games and Borderlands games, which is great. And so some of those devs have landed on their feet in this project. Yeah, and I guess it's like Gearbox taking some of that wider Borderlands world and storytelling back in-house, which, fair enough. You know, I don't imagine I'll play this because it's not ticking a lot of boxes for me, but I mean, I think it looks well executed. I think if you like the first game, or certainly if you like Borderlands, this is going to be worth checking out, essentially.
Yeah, I would say that I'm sort of a fan of Borderlands. But even that, I wouldn't necessarily be drawn to this sort of Telltale style of game. But as you said, the original one was really well done, really well handled, really landed. So yeah, maybe it's something to look out for. After that was Dying Light Bloody Ties, coming on October the 13th. This is DLC for the original game and seems to revolve around the sort of arena battle or in some capacity. Yeah, I don't know. Wasn't feeling it so much, I've got to say.
I mean, divided the fans a wee bit as well since it was
there you go. Not entirely sure how I would feel about that as well, particularly because this is the first part of DLC and that game was sort of so-so when it came out, and I'm not really sure this is going to be massively improving it. But hey, if you're a fan of Dying Light, then maybe that's something to look out for. After that was Destiny 2 Lightfall DLC, which is coming in February 2023. I didn't recognise this as Destiny when the trailer was playing. I mean, I thought it sort of looked Destiny-ish, but the world was so neon in a way that I just do not associate with Destiny. So, yeah, Destiny fans, look out for that. Then was Sonic Frontiers, Lewis, coming on November the 8th. This game looks the way that it looks, and I personally think that this concept for Sonic is a good one, and there's no reason that this shouldn't have been a good game. However, when people got their hands on this, it just seemed to be negative all over the place. So, I don't know, it doesn't feel as though there's been enough time to turn the game around since then. So yeah, I'm pretty worried about this, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I would like the few quite positive, because there were some positives that came out of that preview coverage, but almost anyone that did say something positive about any aspect of the game that I saw did also basically say this should probably be delayed in order to get it right, and they seem to be really committed to getting it out before the end of the year. So
yeah,
there we are. I agree with you though. I think it's a good concept, and hopefully it executes well enough.
After that, Lewis, was Under the Waves. This by Quantic Dream, coming in 2023. We already know that Quantic Dream are making a Star Wars game, so interesting to see a second game that they are now involved with. This one seems to be a sort of underwater exploration game, which might be a bit of a deviation for them, I guess.
I don't know. It certainly was all set underwater. You seem to be piloting some one-man submarine thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we don't know anything about it. They didn't really give much away. And Quantic Dream are a problematic studio in lots of ways, including just how good some of their games are. But there's some wider issues there. But I thought this trailer was really nice. It looked like a nicely put together world, a very beautiful graphics. Underwater shit can be awful though, so bear that in mind. but yeah, I think if you had any interest or any love for any of the other Quantic Dreams games, this is going to obviously be worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, we both played together Detroit Become Human, and it was only just at that point becoming apparent how problematic Quantic Dream as a studio are. But I mean, in terms of this game, yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought it was a pretty nice, if not really nice trailer, to be honest. After that, Lewis, was Goat Simulator 3, coming on November the 7th this year. Look, it looked like Goat Simulator. It looked absolutely fucking goddamn wild. If you're into your Goat Simulator, there is no reason you will not like that game, because it looked unreservedly like Goat Simulator.
Yeah, just that plus the kitchen sink, isn't it? Yeah.
After that was Return to Monkey Island, which is coming on September the 19th. Nice bit of humour in this trailer. I think that they were sort of poking fun at the fact that a lot of people had made fun of their art style with that sort of wee, weird, mad guy in the bottom of the frame. I think that this game looks great. I don't know what everyone's fucking complaint is about this. I think that it looks really stylish, looks really cool. See, if this had no history attached to it at all, this game, I would look at that game and go, that's a nice, cool art style. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have had any negative word to say about it at all. I really think it's unfair the hate that the game's getting, because I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nostalgia, it can be a powerful thing, but it's rough to see. I mean, you've got to assume it's fans of the original games who are being so critical, although you also think those are the people who want this the most and are probably the most forgiving and the most mature because it's an old game.
That was it. Like, people were saying, oh, this is just like teenagers on the internet. I seen someone say that and I was like, no, dude, this is folk in their 40s, man, that are saying this shit. It's, honestly, I mean, ridiculous.
I really hope that it is just teenagers, but yeah, I can't see that a lot of teenagers would be paying any attention to it, particularly because it's so playing up to the history of the franchise. So I agree. I think it looks interesting. This, to me, particularly, like if this ends up on Game Pass or on PS Plus, I'll be playing it, no doubt about it.
Definitely, man, definitely.
Yeah.
After that, Lewis, was Moonbreaker. This from the makers of Subnautica. It's coming on September the 29th. And they described it as a digital miniatures game. It looks exactly like that. Like you play with wee miniature figures, much like a sort of Warhammer tabletop game type vibe. I'm not sure how I felt about this list, to be honest with you. When I was looking at the gameplay, it was a negative reaction, I'm going to be straight with you. But then listening to them actually talk about it, listening to the devs talk about it, I was starting to get into it a wee bit more, and they have this really cool sort of customizable paint thing that you can do with all the wee figurines and whatever, like it would be on a real-life tabletop game. It was interesting. A
total left turn from that studio.
Totally.
Not remotely what we were expecting.
They could not have run in a more far direction from Subnautica.
Because this is one that Keighley had sort of announced in advance was going to be on at the show, like their new IP. And you have certain ideas in your head about what that might be. This was not it.
Certainly not.
Gameplay wise, yeah, I agree. Wasn't doing tons for me. As we were kind of saying as we were reacting to it, it's a style of game that we are both like reasonably into at the moment.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Over the last wee while. But it was when we both realised that it was the kind of digital miniatures thing that I think that made us both pause slightly.
It makes it look quite static as a video game.
Totally,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, I understand things like that work tabletop very, very well. When you translate that to a video game, it does look quite static.
So this will live and die by its lore and by how interesting those characters and stuff are, because you have to want to spend the time painting those miniatures, and you know, because anyone who does that stuff in real life, like with actual tabletop miniatures, they're so invested in it. So if you can create that, this will be great. But if you can't, no one's going to play it.
Yeah, I mean, they also described it as XCOM meets Hearthstone as well, which is an interesting concept in and of itself when you think about it. Yeah, something to keep an eye on, but not something I have massively high hopes for as well. I would say.
Early access next month, it seems to be.
After that, we got a game called Friends vs. Friends, which was absolutely fucking goddamn wild. And it seems to be along the lines of Neon White, where it's a sort of deck builder and FPS shooter. This one seemed to be more multiplayer focused, but was interesting. If that sounds up your street, you can go and check that out. Then after that was Lies of P, which is this dark take on Pinocchio, and it's a Souls-like. It's coming in 2023. It's coming to Game Pass day one, Lewis. We got to see a bit of gameplay here. I think this is a fascinating game, frankly.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, this is probably the strongest game in the show for me. It's
probably the one I'm most... Yeah, it probably is. It was the one I was most excited to see.
I was most excited to see it beforehand from the games that we all knew were going to be here. It still looked really strong. Like you said, it's an interesting, unusual concept, a sort of dark retelling of the Pinocchio story. Although he didn't look like a puppet to me, he looked like a real boy. So who knows?
I'm not sure that it's a retelling of the Pinocchio story. It's just a sort of set in that universe. Like, what if we had these characters and we could tell our own story?
Well, I noticed that they started the trailer with a nod to the original writer of Pinocchio. You know, it said, I can't remember the guy's name, but it said something like, you know, in honor of whatever the dude's name was. So, you know, typically, like all Disney stuff, ends up really sanitizing these stories. I think the original Pinocchio story is actually very...
Yeah, they probably dark, are. Yeah, so, I mean, it's like all the Brothers Grimm stuff as well. Like, it's all bleak as fuck when you read it.
To take that and to put it into a kind of video game world, to make it look like a sort of steampunk Bloodborne... They themselves, it's been mentioned loads of times, it's in that kind of Souls-like vein, although I didn't see too much of those elements within the trailer, but I guess you just don't really show off what happens when you die in a trailer this, you know what I mean? But I'm interested in this one, very excited to keep seeing more of it. We were debating what kind of scale this is. We think maybe sort of double A, like... Double
A. I'm thinking a sort of Plague's Tale scale is what I'm thinking. Maybe something that's going to be 15 hours rather than 30 hours. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I would be very happy with that.
Fine by me.
I think that the Souls stuff, to me, looks as if it's coming from the combat rather than perhaps maybe having to go and collect your souls and losing all your currency and stuff like that. Like, it just looks as if the combat was very Souls-inspired. Yeah. I don't know how far the Souls influence goes beyond that.
Yeah, let's wait and see. Yeah,
definitely. After that was Stranded Alien Dawn. This is coming to early access in October. It's one of these sort of survival base builder games. If that's up your street, you can go and check that out. After that was Atlas Fallen. This coming in 2023. Got a very cool CG trailer, I've got to say, with sand dogs, as we were calling them in our reaction video. It seems to be a Destiny meets Monster Hunter type of vibe about it, and that there will be like one big boss that you need to fight, basically. From this trailer, it was difficult to tell, but I thought it did look interesting. After that was Homeworld 3. This is coming in 2023. This was basically Command and Conquer in space, so far as I can tell, Liz. For what it was, it looked quite cool, I've got to say, but not up my street. After that was Genshin Impact. They were basically just showing off version 3. If you're into Genshin Impact, you almost certainly know more about this than I do, because I was looking at that trailer going, yep, it's still Genshin Impact. And they also showed off Honkai Star Rail by the same developer, which seems to be set on a space train, which is cool. It was just a CG trailer, but again, really couldn't make head or tail of it, if I'm totally honest. Then it was High on Lifeless. This is the game by Justin Roiland and Squanch Games. It's been delayed recently until December the 13th, but we did get a look at some gameplay. That gameplay was fine-ish. Lewis disagrees. I'm interested in this game still. I've not been put off by that gameplay. I'm telling myself right now that it is an early game boss that we witnessed there. And to be honest, I'm not trying to back up. It wasn't brilliant.
No, I think you're right there. And I would preface my criticisms with it and saying, like, I suspect that is the first boss and it's teaching you some of the bare bones mechanics. That to me feels like an odd thing to show a thing like this, because you want to show it off in the best light rather than in a way that's kind of like holding your hand. The thing I was already worried about with this game, and I'm a Rick and I like Rick and Morty. I don't want to get involved in that fan base, to be honest, but
I love Rick and Morty. I'll fucking say it. Rick and Morty's great.
And like, I thought the other stuff that Squanch Games have done in the past, the VR game that they made, was fascinating, and this looks beautiful and kind of funny and strange. I was already worried from the first time we ever saw it that the talking weapons, it turns out, because that knife is talking to you.
Oh no, it's not just the one gun. There's like lots of guns.
I knew there'd be more than one gun, but I didn't realise that basically anything in your hands is going to be chatting to you. I worry quite a lot because video games are never as funny as video games think that they are, that might become so painfully annoying. A bit like having Claptrap in Borderlands strapped to your wrist for the entire.
But the difference is Borderlands isn't as well written as Rick and Morty.
That's true. But added to that, I just thought the gameplay here looked really thin. Like, the gunplay, it was just strafing around. There was no challenge to it. There was just kind of very basic swinging around a very small arena. I just did not think that was a great way to show off that game. And I was interested enough in it before, but that was, to me, a real letdown.
I mean, I'm finding it hard to disagree with you. I just don't think I'm quite as down on it now as you probably are. I think that's probably where we're sitting here. After that was Hard Space Shipbreaker, which is coming to consoles on September the 20th. This is already out on PC, and a lot of people seem to like it. It seems to be reviewed pretty well, that. Then we got The Expanse, a Telltale series, which looks a lot more like Life is Strange than a Telltale game, and that's because Deck 9 are also involved in the making of this game list. It sort of was what it was. If you're a fan of the series, I suppose you'll be more into it than I was. It looked alright is what I'd say. Then it was Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is apparently a movie that I have never heard of. I actually thought it was, like, the way it was sort of introduced by Keighley, it was like, oh, this is a movie franchise that's getting made into a game. I thought it was Halloween, like, right away, and then it very quickly became apparently not Halloween.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this franchise at all, this movie. People seem to be going mad about it in the space as well, like the physical audience. It must be an American thing.
I've never heard of this. It's coming early 2023. If that's up your street, you can go and check it out. After that, Lewis, was Scars Above. Not Stars Above, but Scars Above.
Yeah,
get it?
I see what they did there.
Yeah. This was giving me mad Returnal vibes, which is good vibes, man. That is good vibes to give me. I thought it looked pretty cool. No date, though, but for me, something to keep my eye on, that one.
Yeah, definitely. An interesting little trailer, that one.
Then there was Weird Song, spelt with a Y for some reason. This is from Veterans of Bethesda. Looks really creepy and interesting. Looks like they're setting up quite a cool looking world there. Good credentials on the developers. I'm interested in this one, I'm just going to say it. Initially, when Geoff Keighley announced it and they said that they were making an ambitious RPG, I was like, oh, for a new studio, that's not usually great news. But when you've got the credentials of these guys, then maybe that's something to really look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of clout there from games like, well, the Fallout games were represented, Outer Worlds was represented, I think Skyrim was on that.
Yeah, the Elder Scrolls something was on there as well. Yeah, definitely.
So they're going under Something Wicked games now. We didn't see a lot of this. Hard to know much.
No, it was literally just like a tease, basically, wasn't it? Yeah.
Strange kind of world happening.
Character as well there.
The sun and moon kind of becoming one big eye, or who knows what was going on. But
it was really weird and creepy. You should go and check this out. Like, if you haven't seen it, like, go and check out. It's a 20-second trailer, maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. Yeah. Then was Age of Empires 4 list. This is basically just more content. It's coming on October the 25th. If you're into Age of Empires, keep an eye out for that. Then was Gotham Knights list, coming on October the 21st, which is 4 days earlier than it was supposed to be coming out. Bizarrely, and for a game that I think needs all the days it can have, that is a strange decision. Lewis, it still doesn't look great.
Yeah, it doesn't look amazing. I mean, I think this is the kind of trailer that we've been waiting on a wee bit from this game. This game is overexposed massively. It has been shown.
They started so early, way too early.
They started too early, but also their whole kind of marketing rollout with the kind of fairly regular character deep dives, I just think has drawn this out to the nth degree. Like, we didn't need to see that much of each individual component of this. It's not a particularly complex game. It's not something that we haven't played before, basically. So neither of us have ever been particularly excited about it.
No, certainly not.
But I thought it was time, really, that we saw some of the villains, we saw a bit more of the story and the context of the world, because up until this point I feel like all we've been told in that side of things is that it's about the Court of Owls and Batman's dead, and that is like that is it. And that side of it I did think looked kind of interesting, and I was actually, as I was watching it, I was thinking it is a shame that I'm probably not going to play this, because I really like Batman media generally, and this looks like it's a story that could be worth experiencing, but nothing about the gameplay has really caught me yet. And unless it comes out and catches people by surprise, I mean, I'm sure we were fairly critical of the way something like Guardians of the Galaxy looked before it came out.
Yeah, in fact, I can say with confidence that we were.
and then it turned out to be, really positively received. So you can never say never with these things, but I don't imagine that I'm going to be rushing out to play it. And it does look like something that, with a bit more time, a bit more polish, maybe some fresher ideas, maybe if it had just been made by Rocksteady and kept in the Arkhamverse, it could have been, a bit better than it's looking at the moment. But, I guess the jury's not fully out for me just yet.
I mean, it's pretty much out for me, mate. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, it'll be very interesting to see how this reviews. But yeah, I don't know. I just can't muster any excitement for it whatsoever, if I'm honest. After that was Where Winds Meet, this by Everstone Games. No date on this one, but mad the Ghost of Tsushima vibes here, Lewis. But a bit more mythical, I would say. Really stylish looking game. Obviously a new IP. I thought that one looked really interesting as well, I've got to say.
Yeah, another pretty strong one. Like you said, a sort of quite a mythical infusion of different kind of, I guess, Japanese. I wasn't sure if it was Japanese or Chinese, but I think
it was Japanese. I'm sure they mentioned the period of Japan that it was set in, but I can't remember what that was.
But yeah, like particularly the last few kind of moments of that trailer, I think were quite visually impressive. This giant kind of golden statue thing with a guy sat on top of it, and then
with a panther,
yeah,
awesome.
and then a player character drawing the sword. It just it had real atmosphere about it. It did have sort of Ghost of Tsushima, maybe sort of modern Assassin's Creed vibes to it as well.
Sure,
but you could also totally see it being slightly more Soulsy as well, like in a Sekiro vibe or whatever, because some of the kind of combat that we saw wee snippets of looked a bit less arcadey than some of that can be.
Definitely. As we were saying when we were watching it, I think that this is going to live and die on its combat. Absolutely, really, and Ghost of Tsushima done a fantastic job of making the combat and that feel like weighty and just feel really good when you were playing. Do you know what I mean?
And if they can,
as well, exactly, absolutely. And if they can capture some of that, I think they could be onto a really interesting game there. Game. After that, Lewis, Hideo Kojima turned up because, of course, he did. It's a Geoff Keighley event. But to introduce his new podcast, which will be on Spotify as of September the 8th, and it will be produced in both Japanese and English, I believe. So we're now competing with Hideo Kojima.
And for that reason, we will stop talking about it immediately.
No, this was wild, man.
Totally
wild.
Bizarre. I mean, I assumed that he was just going to do the kind of official Death Stranding on Game Pass announcement.
Me too. That's exactly what I thought he was going to announce.
Did mention that he's working on games.
Yes, plural. That's true.
At least in the translation. So that's exciting. I mean, not that we didn't expect that, but yeah. I guess I'll check this out. I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be like... Is it going to be like a dev diary thing? Is it going to be just like a video games podcast? Is it just going to be
they also mentioned
something else?
They also mentioned that Geoff Keighley was going to be on there doing a news segment.
Like an industry news section.
Also, I don't think I've ever heard Hideo Kojima speak in English.
Well, he might not. It did say it would have simultaneous translation. It would be available in Japanese and English. But that could easily be guests and stuff. You know what I mean? He did say there would be guests, so he could have someone from Kojima Productions on his show who maybe can't speak English. But I don't know if he...
Oh, that's interesting.
He must
have
be
no idea.
Right?
Oh, I think he probably can speak English. Like, undoubtedly, he can probably speak some English, but he obviously isn't at a point where he's comfortable doing interviews in English.
Doesn't want to either.
Yeah, exactly. He's Hideo Kojima. He can do what he fucking wants. Exactly. Anyway, that was wild. After that was Park Beyond, which is a theme park builder, which is coming in 2023. If that's up your street, you can go and check that out. Wasn't doing much for me, I've got to say, Liz.
No.
Then it was Warhammer 40k Darktide, a game which has been delayed quite a lot and got delayed recently again until November the 30th when it's coming out on PC. I don't think it is coming out on Xbox on that date anymore. This was supposed to be a Game Pass day one release, but I think that is now, I would argue, probably likely next year, but that is only for the PC release. But for the game that it is, I actually think it looks pretty good. After that was Black Tales, which is coming this winter. Not very sure what the game is, Liz, if I'm completely honest with you, other than you get to shoot a bow and arrow at stuff, including big rocks that seem to explode when you hit your arrows against them.
Naturally.
Inexplicably. Yeah. Got to see a little bit of gameplay as well. Looked alright, maybe something worth keeping your eye on. Then we got Crossfire X Babylon, which is an update for the game, which has shadow dropped as of today. Again, if you're into your Crossfire X, you can go and check that out. Then there was Dorf Romantic, which is coming to Switch in September the 29th. I didn't know much about this game at all. It seems to be about building little worlds, but you seem to know a bit about it.
Yeah, it's sort of like you get these kind of tiles, you put them together. I think you're trying to kind of bring the world back to life or something like that. It's a super zen, chill...
Low intensity gaming,
exactly. It seems I actually thought as I was watching it had already come out on Switch, so it's possible even that this was known to be coming a while back. But yeah, if you need to relax of an evening, maybe this is one to check it.
No, it sounds cool, man. I mean, I've got to say the visuals of it wasn't doing much for me, but since you've spoken about it and I've now seen another few people speak about it, I'm sort of like, oh, maybe this is something to check out.
Yeah, worth a wee look at least, yeah.
After that was Outlast Trials, which is coming in closed beta on October the 28th, this being sort of a multiplayer version of an Outlast game. It looked fucking grim, mate. It looked real grim.
It certainly did. A lot of disgusting, disturbing violence there. I don't know, I know bits and pieces about the normal Outlast games. I don't really know what kind of multiplayer game this is, even though I know we've seen it before, but you know these games kind of just blend into one after a while, don't they? But I'm sure if you're into your Outlast games, this is going to tick some boxes for you.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure if you're like a horror fan or into horror games, this will be something worth checking out, basically, you know. Then the final game, the one that closed the show, was Dead Island 2, Lewis, something that we already knew about. But we got a release date now of February the 3rd, 2023, and we got to see a little bit of gameplay as well. Look, to me, this looked like Dead Island, and I don't think that is a bad thing at all, do you know what I mean? Because I think for fans of the series, that's basically all they're wanting, do you know what I mean? I actually compared it to Saints Row, although as of this week that is reviewing very poorly, but I think that the fans of that series just want that sort of fun whimsy of those original games brought into the 21st century and not be a buggy mess. Do you know what I mean? I think that's all these people are really asking for. And for what it was, it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it seems to be moving it into a sort of... I mean, they referred to it as Ellie. I thought they were going to say a sort of fictionalised Ellie, but it was like...
No, they literally said it was Ellie.
They did
and the character in the trailer was very clearly Lenny Kravitz. Like, it was insane how much the man looked like Lenny Kravitz.
But it seems to be like... Well, they were talking a lot about how they were referencing the sort of Hollywood pulp B-movie stuff that had inspired them, and they wanted to bring that out in the game, so that's kind of why they moved it to Ellie itself. If you remember the original Dead Island trailer that was really popular and successful back in the day, they did this not as clever a thing here, but just a very sort of similar... It feels like the same tone, the same... It's just like the next version of all of that.
Sure, yeah.
I don't imagine you're going to get a lot of major gameplay evolutions, although they did sort of say it was like maybe had more sort of action RPG elements to it, but also it's 2022 and it's a video game, so of course it does.
Very true.
But yeah, if you were a fan of Dead Island or any games like this, I think your Saints Row comparison is very apt as well.
It's the same sort of vibe as well, like from the same sort of era.
Yeah,
you know?
It's like, you know, in the same way that Saints Row was like taking the slightly more serious GTA and kind of going full sandbox with it.
Yeah.
This feels like that, but for zombie games, essentially.
Totally,
it's just like you can just go about massacre and stuff. It was a very gory, violent trailer, and they did say that
they did censor some of it.
They said that there was like an uncensored version available, which is
I think that was just to drive traffic to the fucking YouTube channel, mate, to be honest. But yeah, that was it. Thoughts on the show overall, Lewis?
Thoughts overall, I mean, I didn't go in expecting a great deal.
I think we had very low expectations, and I think that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the best parts of the show just about were things that we already knew about, and in fact things that Keighley had told us
said were going to be there. Yeah, I don't know why he does that list.
I don't know.
Infuriates me to the extent that he does it.
Yeah, there must be some rationale behind it. I can totally, like, for example, I can totally see with like Hogwarts and Gotham Knights that you would say in advance we're getting a new trailer for them, because it's not going to be a surprise that they're there. They're massive IP that are going to bring a lot of fans who are not the types of people who are going to watch Gamescom Opening Night live naturally are going to come and watch it because of those. But like, for him to have told us like that we were getting the Lies of P, and for him to have told us that we were getting the Unknown Worlds new IP.
Yeah, they were strange choices. I don't know what that accomplishes other than spoiling that announcement.
I think exactly that, because they're not games that are kind of big enough, or developers that are big enough to really draw in the crowds. The only other rationale I could see for announcing some of these types of things is if they leaked first, but like none of that
But they didn't. No, I mean the Borderlands thing did.
Yeah, certain other things did, absolutely, but not some of those core ones that he was tweeting about. I don't get it. So it kind of took the sting out of some of it, because as we said there, like, to me, the Lies of P was the most interesting looking game here, and he had told us in advance it was going to be here, and so you're kind of just waiting for it. And yeah, still a great trailer, don't get me wrong, but it just changes the kind of complexion of the whole event, I think. Is that, yeah, I think you broadly agree with where I'm at.
Oh, I completely agree with all that, yeah. I don't know why he does that, to be honest with you, because as you said, it totally takes the sting out of the table, doesn't it, of just a lot of these announcements, and I don't know why he wouldn't just let people be surprised about it. But I think that we also went in with relatively tampered expectations of what to expect here. I think that we'd said beforehand that we were probably going to be getting a lot of third-party stuff, specifically because we knew Xbox were going to have their own showcase or event there. We knew that Sony weren't going to be there. We knew Nintendo weren't going to be there. We knew that people like EA weren't going to be there as well. We knew that Activision weren't going to be there. So it was going to be a lot of sort of third-party, smaller developers, and it was that. And to be honest with you, I was sort of glad to see a lot of that. Like, I quite liked a lot of these games. It was interesting to see them, but at the same time, there was nothing knocking my socks off. Do you know what I mean? And I think that was sort of what this was missing. There was nothing that was really like, wham, that is an amazing announcement. God, that's so exciting. Do you know what I mean? There's just nothing like that, you know?
No, I think that's bang on. It's a show that I think if you took out some of those massive hitters, like some of the, sparing AAA games that are here, like your Hogwarts and your Gotham Knights, this would be like a decent indie showcase, really, or like a decent kind of AA showcase, which is fine, and we love a lot of those types of shows, but this is like the opening day of the biggest gaming event in the world, or, you know, depends how you count it, but
certainly one of them.
Yeah, certainly one of them, absolutely. And it lacked just like an absolute heavyweight blow at any point. And it is funny to think, like, you know, Sony said they weren't going to be there, but then they did do a hardware announcement here, but it wasn't the PSVR 2 announcement that they made,
which 2
I think 3 days
when
ago,
it was happening in the video that you can see over on our YouTube channel, you were like, oh, it's going to be PSVR 2, and I went, oh yeah, of course, and then it wasn't, and we're like, what?
So they're not there, but they are making what is a reasonably major announcement. I mean, I know it won't be that important to a lot of people, and it probably is the right kind of crowd to make that announcement too.
I mean, it is, don't get me wrong, but it nonetheless is a bit of Sony hardware. That doesn't come along every day for PlayStation, you know?
And then on the flip side of that, we do know Xbox are coming, and fair enough if they've got their own event. I'm not sure I'd kind of clocked that, but like the fact that none of their major games, and certainly not Pentiment, were in this. We just got sort of Age of Empires. Ubisoft are supposed to be at Gamescom, and I guess they will be on the show floor, but they were not in that showcase at all.
No, I never actually thought about that, but you're right. No, nothing.
And so it's just a lot of, I don't know, a few odd inclusions, a few odd exclusions. Nothing much blew me away here. I think, like, again, Callisto Protocol has been carrying a lot of.
Well, it's been carrying Geoff Keighley through 2022, mate.
Essentially, yeah. And there's a kind of a few games like that have kind of repeatedly shown up at these events and are kind of doing all the heavy lifting in the absence of much else. I think the other thing that feeds into that point is that not a ton of these are coming this year, I don't think. I mean, there was definitely a handful, most of which we already knew about, but a lot of it is into 2023. I mean, it does feel a wee bit like we're limping towards the finish in 2022.
It's not the strongest year, and I think that you're right to point that out. And Geoff Keighley can't do anything about that, to be fair. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he also can't do anything about the people that don't want to show with him. Like Xbox want to do their own thing. All those other people that I mentioned aren't there. Yeah, I suppose that's another interesting point. Like, do you feel that this has been a wee bit of a casualty of a weaker finish to the second half of the year? Do you know what I mean?
I think so, yeah. I think basically there's not a hell of a lot to be shouting about.
I mean, other than God of War, really.
No, that's the main one, and obviously your big sports games and your Call of Duties and stuff are going to do the business as well.
Sure, I mean, like there's like Bayonetta 3 coming as well, and other various exciting stuff for me personally.
Yeah.
But in terms of like totemic year-defining games, it's God of War.
Well, exactly. I mean, at the moment you're still, from a kind of Game of the Year perspective, or even just a lot of the bigger categories, not just at the Game Awards, but at any awards show, you're kind of looking at it going, there's 2 or 3 candidates for a lot of stuff. There's been a good few decent indie games, although as we've discussed before, like nothing on that kind of like Celeste level of kind of earth-shatteringly kind of brilliant stuff. It's been a slow year in a lot of ways. It's not been the best year ever. That said, we all know why, and it's still coronavirus. It's still, all of these issues that have been building over the last few years, and we are about to enter a financial downturn, so that's not going to help things really. But I guess the other element of all of that is that the summer has felt quite busy with events here and there, particularly because of Summer Games Fest, to have done that in late June basically, right? Or mid-June. So what, 6 to 8 weeks ahead of this event, if you'd put all of the best of Summer Game Fest and all of the best from this together into one show, you might be talking about having one really great showcase. And instead you've had this kind of more bedraggled thing across the summer, and a lot of the big publishers haven't shown anything, and yeah, it's a funny summer we find ourselves in ahead of a reasonably quiet winter. Not that there's not good stuff coming, there definitely is, but you're not looking at 4 or 5 games to close out the year that you're like, oh, I'm desperate to play those,
Yeah, definitely. All right, Lewis. Well, on that rather depressing note to end 2022 in gaming, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or whatever you get your podcasts, that really, really, really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. And I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along games for this month are The Floor is Jelly and The Enigma Machine, both of which can be complete in a combined 4 hours, I would say, as in both games can be complete within a total of 4 hours. Hope that's clear. This was games that we chose from itch.io's bundle for abortion funds in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade in America. These games look fantastic. The Floor is Jelly looks so much better than it sounds. I'm going to say this every single week. It looks fantastic. And the Enigma Machine looks like a really interesting project in a video game. Do you know what I mean? Just something that would never happen on any other level than as a short experience. Do you know what I mean? It just looks really interesting and something I'm quite looking forward to playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to playing both of these. I haven't got around to it yet, but 2 completely different games.
Very different games.
Even if for some reason you're not going to play both of them, go and check them both out and see which one might take your fancy and play along with that, because yeah, these are, I think, the most varied of the pairs that we've done out of this little series.
Oh, massively,
so far. Should be really good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.